She's dead, wrapped in plastic. Those are the first words we hear from Pete Martell about Twin Peaks' 17-year-old homecoming queen, Laura Palmer. It's the morning of February 24th, 1989, and her body is washed up on a rocky beach. Her mother, Sarah, has just discovered she isn't in bed, and her father, Leland, is at the Great Northern Hotel preparing for an important business meeting. When Sheriff Truman shows up to deliver the heartbreaking news, both Leland and Sarah know without being told. "My daughter's dead," Leland cries as Sarah's wails are heard through the phone. This was the girl who ran the Meals on Wheels program after school, who tutored Josie Packard in English, and who always spent time with Johnny, Audrey Horne's special needs brother. She was a light in the community, and now she was dead. Murdered horrifically and discarded like trash. The rest of the hour and a half pilot, I was doing so well there.
It was so good. It was so good.
It's, you know what, it's one of those days.
It really is.
The rest of the hour and a half pilot to Twin Peaks and the rest of the show itself focuses on everyone Laura leaves behind. Like her parents, the people closest to her know what's happened before it's said aloud. Her lifelong best friend Donna takes one look at Laura's empty seat and breaks down. James, her other best friend, understands from just Donna's reaction, but the despair doesn't stop there. This event uproots the entire town. Everyone knew Laura, everyone loved Laura. Instead of the stoicism we've come to expect from cops on TV, Deputy Andy has to be escorted away from the scene. He's so upset. The principal sobs
That's
after
a good point, actually. I never really thought of that.
When I showed the pilot to Eve, she was like, I've noticed in the first 20 minutes I've seen 3 men crying. And she's like, I don't see that on TV.
Yes.
And I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. Because Andy cries, Leland cries, the principal's a guy, he cries.
Oh my gosh.
All of that, yes. Josie shuts down the town sawmill for the day.
David Lynch was like, we don't have time for toxic masculinity.
No. He really, no. And I feel like it's...
like all the good characters.
Yes,
this, you know?
But I feel like that's such a big part of something he wants to explore that I think he wanted to make sure that the actual people and the good people.
Yes, yeah.
Johnny Horne is inconsolable and doesn't understand why Laura won't be spending time with him anymore. A song we don't know yet to be Laura's theme swells in the background of the episode. When Special Agent Dale Cooper of the FBI arrives in town to investigate Laura's murder, he's taken back by how much life means in Twin Peaks. He's amazed that her death has so completely undone these people. Being an FBI agent, Cooper is no stranger to horror, and he is absolutely transfixed by the small-town America vibe where everyone knows everyone and everyone cares for one another. When he's examining her body, Cooper finds a piece of paper under her left ring finger of the letter R. That means nothing right now. Just keep it in mind. The portrayal of the Palmers' grief and the fact that a new weekly episode didn't wash it all away was regarded as an achievement for TV at that time. Cop shows of the 70s and 80s were known as having victims of the week. You solved the crime at the end of the episode, nobody was really all that affected by it, and if they were, they got over it pretty quickly. But Twin Peaks was different than anything else on TV at that time. Laura's murder wasn't going to be solved anytime soon. Each episode pushed you further into the mystery of not only Laura's demise, but the mystery of the town itself.
Yeah, and come to think of it, you know, even with Buffy and X-Files, they still had, like, a specific thing every week.
Is it episodic? Is that how you say that? Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously as it went on, it became more and more serialized.
Right.
But it seems like Twin Peaks was serialized right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And they didn't have an antagonist or a mystery to solve. Every episode it was like this, I don't know how many
it was like a rabbit hole.
Like 21-hour movie.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the first season's about 22, 23. We don't have time, I don't have time at least, to unpack all of the supernatural entities of it. I hope that if you're listening to this, you know at least a little bit about Twin Peaks. But yes, instead of answers, you only develop more questions. And regardless of how enamored Cooper is with the way things in Twin Peaks work, dark things that can't be explained also happen here. As you learn about those involved with Laura's life and death, you come to find that everyone is connected to her through either good or bad, light or dark. And it seems that now, without Laura's light, the darkness of the town that she was already akin to was starting to make itself known. Cooper, being an outsider, not blinded by the preconceived notions of the town, he's the first to suggest that this isn't an unknown assailant and that Laura knew her killer. In the same scene, he mentions the murder of Teresa Banks, who is connected to it, and she was also missing the ring that was on her ring finger when they found her body.
Okay.
Again, not that important, keep it in mind. As we learn about the people Laura surrounded herself with, it becomes clear she was not the innocent all-American girl the town wanted to believe her to be. She was harboring a dark secret, one she didn't have a choice in, that affected her entire life and ultimately ended it. She was being sexually abused by a man she calls Bob since she was 12 years old. This abuse tainted her image of herself, as sexual abuse so often does, so much so that it's almost as if she split herself in two. There was the good Laura that everyone loved, that had the sweet Donna Hayward as a best friend, that never did anything wrong or mean, and then there was the Laura that liked getting high, enjoyed working at One-Eyed Jack's as an escort, and partaking in self-destructive behavior. She saw hurting herself as a way to prevent others from hurting her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To explain who Laura actually is, I think I first need to explain David Lynch's reasons for creating Twin Peaks. What is Twin Peaks about is a loaded question.
I thought you were asking me that for a second. I was like,
yes, tell me right now. David Lynch is notorious for not explicitly answering questions about his work, both in his work and in talking about his work. There are a lot of elements about the show and the central mystery. Like I said, I just don't have time to unpack. I mostly want to focus on Laura's life right now, so maybe I can do a separate episode exploring her in the Black Lodge and what the return sets up, but for now, just Laura. Yes, I know Twin Peaks is the brainchild of Mark Frost as well as Lynch, however, the works I want to focus on have more to do with Lynch than Frost. Frost produced Fire Walk with Me, but he wasn't involved during filming, and Lynch is notorious for just changing stuff during filming, regardless of what the script says.
Right.
And he didn't write Laura's diary, so to make everything easier, I'm just going to focus on Lynch. He was also the one who self-admittedly fell in love with Laura and her contradictions, and he was the one who wanted to see her living and breathing. He's the kind of director who believes in showing things like they are and letting the audience infer from there. He talks about ideas as this thing. You have the thing. And then that infers where you go next, and then that decides where you go next and where you go next. So it just branches off from everything else. The same way in the show, you have Laura, and her life and her death connects everything together. You can't get to the end without fully first understanding the beginning. So my understanding, at least of why he created Twin Peaks and what he was trying to say, could be entirely wrong. But I'm using things he said about his work and how he views the world to get there, so bear with me. The idea of balancing the macabre and the mediocre was something Lynch had already explored in his work, most notably in his 1986 movie Blue Velvet.
Which Katie and I did not understand the first time we watched it.
No, we watched it at a midnight movie in New York, and that was also one of the longest days of my life, so I was not fully there. But no, I did not understand it at all. And then I read some stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, because that's what he does. He just puts it in front of you, and it's just, what is it? What does it look like? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to read into it, and it's like, no, there's nothing to read into.
I think he also doesn't treat the audience like they're dumb.
No.
And doesn't try to, I don't know, he has his own idea of what he's doing, but it's so metaphorical that you could pretty much do anything with it.
Yeah, and he's also such a visual guy. He will say he's not the best at writing dialogue. He's not the best at stuff like that. But, visually, that's where he, his bread and butter. So, Blue Velvet. Jeffrey Beaumont, played by our Agent Cooper, Kyle MacLachlan. Love him. He has a terribly nice life. White picket fence, red roses on the lawn of his family home and everything. When he gets the opportunity to peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and catch a glimpse of the seedy underbelly of the seemingly perfect little town he's always lived in, things go very, very bad. It's not until after he's back home, the horrors of what he's faced fading, that he can start to actually appreciate his life and that white picket fence. It's no surprise, I think, after hearing that The Wizard of Oz is one of Lynch's favorite movies. The stories are sort of similar. There's this young girl who has a wonderful life on her family's farm, and she can't fully appreciate it until she is literally swept away into a Technicolor nightmare. I also wonder if his love of the color red, to symbolize weird shit, comes from The Wizard of Oz.
I think that's really, really interesting.
Yes, because that's one of his philosophies. You can't see the full beauty of light without experiencing the absence of it, because that's all darkness is. Darkness isn't a physical thing in and of itself, it's the absence of something else. Since Lynch only made movies up until this point, he seemed to have a certain disdain for those types of shows that arose after the 50s. He didn't like how easy it was becoming to see terrible violence on TV and to not at all be affected by it. He grew up in the 50s when the world was changing following the Second World War. He recalls that things were different then, simpler and kinder, because everybody had endured so much horror. Taking a look at the TV in that time, that was the boost of the wholesome all-American sitcom where everything was fine, and even if it wasn't, it was by the time your 30 minutes of airtime were up. But both of those ideas, the lovely sitcom life and the police procedural that goes through victims like an assembly line, aren't real life. Because bad things happen in real life, things that change you, things that perhaps you can never come back from. Twin Peaks feels like an answer to what TV...
I just keep thinking of Adam 12. Is it Adam
yes.
12 and what's... Oh, Dragnet.
Dragnet, yes.
Where it's...
Yep. Yeah.
Sergeant Tuesday.
That's the procedural.
Today
there
is
it is.
Wednesday.
Yep. So Twin Peaks feels like an answer to what TV was at the time and what Lynch saw the world turning into. In The Return, which is season 3 of Twin Peaks that happened 25 years after the second season premiered, he seems to credit the test of the first nuclear bomb to the downfall of humanity and perhaps even the catalyst for the evil that seemed to follow. And if you know how many current popular shows credit Twin Peaks as an influence, it's safe to say it worked.
Mm-hmm.
From The Sopranos to Lost to Mr. Robot, Twin Peaks changed the TV landscape in ways no one thought possible. In the year between Twin Peaks seasons 1 and 2, David Lynch's daughter, Jennifer, wrote The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. She was asked by her father to write it because of something she said one day when he picked her up from school. She was lamenting about how she wished she... Yeah. How she wished she... What?
Take 3.
How she wished she could find another girl's diary because she was so sick of not knowing if she was the only girl on the planet who thought the way she thought and felt the way she felt. I agree.
Yes.
Growing up as a young girl, yeah, you feel insane. Because I feel like specifically with girls, no one talks about anything.
Nope.
Anything at all.
None.
So you're just sitting there like, is my body normal? Are my thoughts normal? Am I correct? Like, what's going on? So, beginning on her 12th birthday, the diary takes us all the way up to the week or so before her murder. And it unfortunately chronicles her abuse from Bob in a very honest, visceral way. It's a tough listen.
I was gonna say, definitely, like, trigger warning for that.
Yeah, tough listen or read, big trigger warning. Sheryl Lee narrates it for Audible, but it's on YouTube for free, so don't give Amazon any more money. Go listen to it for free. She does an amazing job. She's so good. But it does what Jennifer set out to do with it. Laura's voice is honest and innocent. She even said the process of writing it almost felt like automatic writing. Laura just poured out of her. I think she originally wrote most of it and then lost it. Either lost the file or wherever she was writing it, and she was talking to somebody and she was like, yeah, I can't remember anything that I wrote. And they were like, well, it must not have been any good. And she was like, shit, I guess you're right. Yeah. If you can't remember it, it must not have been great. So there you go. You got to start over.
Hey, at least you got your first draft out of the way.
Yeah. One of the biggest things the diary touches on is Laura's perception of her abuse and her sexuality. She starts to associate her blossoming sexuality and her interest in boys with something that's evil, something that's actually causing Bob to do this to her. She swears if she can just be good, like Donna, if she can just stop thinking about sex, then she wouldn't deserve this. Which is so horrible. I don't really think I have to point out how often women are shamed or even blamed for the abuse they endure. But soon she learns it doesn't matter. Bob is going to visit her no matter what she does, how she dresses, or how she acts. In an undated diary entry not long before her tragic death, she writes, Laura Palmer, she was born without a choice, was told very quietly one night long ago that she would like it or she would have to be killed. Isn't that just like a knife to the heart? There are so many phrases like that in the book that, it's just horrible.
You just get chills.
Yeah. So, because the diary was published in between seasons, Laura's killer was still unknown. It was Lynch's intention to never solve Laura's murder for the audience, actually. Maybe in the last episode he felt, but not anytime soon. He felt that when that happened, the magic would die and nobody would care anymore. And seeing as though it was canceled mere episodes after her killer was revealed, it would seem Lynch was right. Although he left at this point, which I'm sure didn't help matters. Yes.
Because of the decisions they were making?
Because he didn't want that. And season 2, the execs were like...
who do we have to blame for this? What's his name?
Bob Iger.
Fucking Bob Iger.
But also, I think you have the audience to blame. Because they were so, well, who killed Laura Palmer? I thought we were going to find out at the end of the first season. When are we going to find out? And like we said, that wasn't normal. So they weren't... It was like, they were just done with it. It was like, if you weren't going to tell us, then we're not going to watch it anymore.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened. A lot of other things contribute to the downfall of season 2, though, I think. Cooper and Audrey was supposed to be a thing.
Right.
Tom McLaughlin was like, no, Cooper would never do that, which I agree with. So that got shelved. I think that was supposed to be a big part of the second half of season 2, which obviously didn't happen. So it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
He did finish the second season, though, after they were canceled. He made everybody write to Bob Iger and let them do their last few episodes. So he was able to save it. But in order to write the book, Lynch told his daughter who the killer was, who Bob was, because Bob is not a man. Bob is an entity. Bob is what Laura sees her abuser as, and Laura was not abused by a heartless stranger who came into her window at night. Like Cooper tells the town the night after her death, she was being abused by someone she knew very well, her father, Leland. Yeah. As an entity of destruction and of evil, Bob has been using Leland's body as a host. Cooper's fellow FBI agent Albert says of Bob that maybe that's all he is, the evil that men do. But unfortunately, I don't think it's that simple. If Twin Peaks is the marriage between realism and Lynchian dreamland, you literally have an FBI agent investigating things like talking logs, giants, dwarfs, and men that seem to exist only in dreams. The idea that anything in the show is either real or metaphor just isn't right. It's both. The idea that Leland and the rest of the town, for that matter, are completely blameless would be a misinterpretation. Now, I can't find any evidence that Lynch read Laura's diary. I have read that he loved it, but I can't find any information on it in more than that one place, so I'm honestly not sure. But Fire Walk With Me, the prequel film Lynch made about Laura's final week, seems to take a lot of inspiration from her diary. I also can't imagine he was like, write this book, and then fucking I'm not gonna read it. Like,
I'm never gonna read your book, sorry, honey.
And it's either that, or Jennifer Lynch is so connected to her father that she knew exactly what he wanted without him having to ask, which could be entirely possible. I don't know. So in contrast to the show, in the movie Fire Walk With Me, no one is here to presume what Laura was thinking or feeling. Laura was here to show us herself, which coincidentally is a big pet peeve of Laura's, as she states in her diary. She can't stand the idea of people putting emotions on her or telling her how she should feel about something, which I think is such a young girl. You have many people telling you what you should feel and what you should think, and she was just like, I don't want to do that. And when I'm older, nobody can make me feel any way that I want without my permission, because it's up to me. And I can't wait to be older, because that's what I want. I don't want anyone to tell me what I'm supposed to be thinking. She writes, she knows, even at 12 years old, that there's a difference between the Laura everyone loves and the Laura that actually exists. She writes, I think I'm safe in saying they don't know me at all. Fire Walk With Me was expected by fans to answer every burning question they had after the series finale at the end of season 2, because for some reason they didn't learn their lesson. Not only did it not do that.
I'm sorry, still haven't learned our lesson.
We sure haven't. Nobody has.
All of the YouTube videos that say such and such explained makes me want to
oh my god,
myself.
I know. I see them and I'm like, you didn't.
It's not supposed. One, it's not supposed to be explained.
Correct.
Like,
there's no right answer.
Right.
Like, there's no right or wrong.
It's up for interpretation. That's kind of how they made it.
Have one thought. One critical thought.
One original thought.
Just one. So not only did it not answer any questions, but it forced audiences away from that caring, quirky town of Twin Peaks they've come to love and replaced it with Laura's Twin Peaks, a place filled with fear and pain. One of the scariest scenes in Fire Walk With Me, because this movie, I think it's been in the horror genre. Like, people consider it a horror movie.
Oh, okay.
Which I agree with, because it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
One of the scariest scenes in it is set around a dinner table in broad daylight. Yeah.
Okay, I don't like that.
Which I think says a lot about Twin Peaks and David Lynch in general.
Uh-huh.
Laura has just seen evidence that her father is Bob and doesn't know what to do about it. When she comes home for dinner, Leland is waiting for her. He notices her half-a-heart necklace and wonders if her boyfriend Bobby gave it to her, which makes him very angry. After she sits down, he asks her if she's washed her hands. He grabs her hands and inspects them and yells at her that she's dirty and how dare she sit down to dinner without washing her hands. Specifically, there is dirt under her left ring fingernail. This is also one of those allusions to her diary. Bob would constantly tell young Laura that she smelled and that she was dirty, even though she knew that wasn't true. Her mother, Sarah, is clearly disturbed and even yells at Leland that Laura obviously doesn't like what he's doing and that he needs to stop. And that sentence, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
When you think about everything else he's doing to her. And it just breaks my heart. Afterwards, that night, Leland is in bed, and like the flip of a switch, he starts sobbing. He comes into Laura's room and tells her that he loves her, and there's this flash of recognition on her face. Bob is gone. This is her father now. He's back. And Ray Wise is so good at that.
Is that the one who plays her dad?
He's just so great. He's really great at the terror of Bob, and then in that moment, it's like, shit, it's like he's Leland again. It's nuts. Oh. I think this scene can be a bit confusing in the Leland-Bob narrative. I think instead of using this scene to clear Leland of any wrongdoing, it demonstrates how calculated abusers can be when it comes to keeping their victims complacent. How so often abusers will follow up their abuse with words of affirmation and apologies. Because that's the thing. She wasn't getting that from Bob. She was getting that from Leland.
Right.
Obviously, good man or not, Leland is not strong enough to resist the destructive energy of Bob, which I think begs the question, how good of a man must he be? How good can any man be? However, I do want to point out that Leland is also a victim. In the second episode of the second season, Cooper and the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department are on the hunt for Bob because they don't know that he's not real. They make posters with his likeness on it and spread the word to gain information. Leland says he knew him as a little boy at the summer house at Pearl Lake he went to.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
That is horrifying.
It gets
sounds
worse.
like some Stephen King nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like that. Oh my
Even
God.
worse, he used to light matches and throw them at him, asking him if he wanted to play with fire. It's never said explicitly, of course, because nothing is. But I take this to mean that Leland was also abused in some way by the entity known as Bob.
Oh, yeah.
The evil that men do, perpetuating a cycle of abuse, best represented in the slow-moving ceiling fan outside of Laura's room that's turned on whenever her abuse occurs. Leland has inherited this abuse and is now using it against his own daughter. In the film, Laura seems to allude to her own demise a lot. Another example of the film and diary being so connected. Laura, even when she was young, used language that suggested her life was just thought out for her, and no matter what she did, she couldn't change it. So much so that she's convinced she's not even here anymore and that she's already past saving. She says she's like a wild turkey. And only Cheryl Lee can say gobble gobble and make us all cry. It's clear that Laura has inherited this fiery, destructive energy, but she seems determined to turn it back on herself instead of hurting those around her. She's fiercely protective of Donna and James and wants to keep them away from her darkness no matter what it takes. In a conversation with Donna, she even predicts that none of the angels would help you because they've all gone away. Angels mean a lot to Laura. Yes, you're correct to have that response. She's constantly wondering about them and the idea of heaven. She even has a painting of an angel on her bedroom wall. Another callback to the diary, Laura sees her abuse and her sexuality as bad things that won't send her to heaven. In her final hours, when her and Ronette are taken to the train car by Leland, the place that Laura loses her life, Ronette prays that she can be saved. A lot like Laura, she cries that she's dirty and that she's not ready. Laura sees an angel appear and cuts Ronette's binds, leading Leland to push her out of the train car and forget about her, ultimately leading to her survival. Laura is betrayed. This was her angel, the angel she watched disappear from her painting earlier that night before she left the house. And now it was here saving Ronette and not her. In Laura's final act of defiance... I'm sorry! I've had to live with it for so long. You do too.
Oh my God.
In Laura's final act of defiance, she takes the mysterious...
And I saw this scene when I watched it with you. I did not like this scene.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's horrible.
So sad.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about it, the way that it's shot, is you don't, see him killing her. It's only her. You only see her. This is the ring that she's been dreaming about. The ring that is connected to Agent Cooper and all the supernatural beings that plague Twin Peaks. This is the ring that was missing from Teresa Banks' corpse. Because Leland/Bob did not bring Laura here to kill her. He brought her here to possess her. To use her as his new host. Putting the ring on makes Bob unable to possess Laura, and instead Leland kills her. Heartbreakingly enough, the last words Laura hears are from her father, begging Bob not to make him do this. I'm sorry.
If everyone needs to walk away from the podcast for a moment.
You may do so.
Ooh, take a breather.
Laura went through her young life believing she didn't have a choice. And maybe she didn't. After all, she seems to have shouldered all the pain and evil in the entirety of Twin Peaks by herself. Unable to talk to those closest to her for fear that if they knew the truth, they wouldn't love her anymore. Even after a lovely encounter with the log lady, which is the only time Laura almost tells someone what's happening to her, the log lady tells her that many people will love her in her life, and Laura wonders if she's even talking about the right Laura Palmer. She says she hopes that many people do love her. If there's any point I want to make with this episode, it's that stories are powerful, and characters are powerful. Laura was terrified that if the people around her knew the real her, they wouldn't love her. But I think we've learned the opposite is true. Laura's story has been talked about in many different ways by many different people. Courtenay Stallings wrote a beautiful book called Laura's Ghost, Women Speak About Twin Peaks, that feature all different types of women talking about Laura and her story and how it's affected them. Even Cheryl Lee, who plays Laura, feels forever connected to and changed by her. Lee likens Laura to an image in water, quote, reflecting back the millions of women and children who have suffered at the hands of abuse. This sentiment is echoed many times throughout her story, with James referring to her as the one and the log lady saying she's the one leading to the many. I think that in the canon of Twin Peaks, that refers to the idea that Laura is a tree and everything else branches off from her. But I also like the idea that she's the one to symbolize the abuse that so many endure. Courtenay Stallings was gracious enough to record us a little something about Laura in her book, so I will play that for you now.
A ghost who haunts can mean multiple things. In one sense, it is a literal manifestation of someone who has died but who persists. Figuratively, a ghost who haunts stays with us, perpetually in our mind and thoughts. Laura Palmer's ghost wouldn't leave me alone. I couldn't stop thinking about her. And I reckoned I wasn't the only woman who couldn't get her out of my mind. So I wrote this book, Laura's Ghost, Women Speak About Twin Peaks, in which women, and only women, speak about Laura, Twin Peaks, and how it all connects to themselves. At the heart of ghost stories is the desire to confront our greatest fears and repressions, and in doing so, exercise those fears and repressions. Laura Palmer haunts so many of us because we see ourselves in her story. By acknowledging the parts of ourselves in her story, we free the ghost. We help others by freeing ourselves. I bear witness to Laura's story because I see myself in it, and I know I'm not alone. Laura Palmer is a fictional character, but she's also still very real to many. For the cover of the book, I didn't want to use an image of Laura Palmer dead, wrapped in plastic. Nor did I want to use the iconic image of Laura as the homecoming queen that ends up being smeared with blood after her parents, Leland and Sarah Palmer, wrestle over it. I didn't want to use an image of Laura associated with blood or death. Instead, I chose the image of Laura Palmer in happier days, dancing with her best friend on the crest of a pine-lined hill, a great picnic feast spread out at their feet, while her lover gazes at their shared joy. This was Laura Palmer alive. This is how we wish we could keep her, free of dark forces and death in a boxcar, with a reassuring angel appearing in red room liminality. For my book, I interviewed several women crucial to the story of Twin Peaks and Laura Palmer, including Cheryl Lee, who performed the characters of Laura Palmer, Maddie Ferguson, Carrie Page, and that mysterious entity in the Red Room. It was important for me to show readers and to hear from Cheryl Lee and herself and how this role inspired her and haunts her still in many good ways and bad. Grace Zabriskie, who portrayed Sarah Palmer, spent hours with me providing such incredible insight into her career as an actor, poet, and artist. In this book, we engage in a kind of contre-temp about Sarah Palmer's complicity in the abuse of her daughter. And Jennifer Lynch discusses writing the character of Laura Palmer in The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, which became foundational for Lee's interpretation of the character, and of course, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I also interviewed executive producer Sabrina Sutherland, who has been with Twin Peaks since the original series and was crucial in the production of season 3. Sutherland has been the voice for Lynch to the Twin Peaks fan community at festivals and events. In exploring Laura Palmer's legacy, I spoke with 26 women from the Twin Peaks fan community. These women represent a cross-section of Twin Peaks fans. I chose to focus on women because women seem to uniquely understand Laura Palmer. Not every woman endures sexual or physical abuse, but women know what it's like not to be believed simply because of their experience being a woman. Many of the women I interviewed talked about Laura's agency and whether she had any at all, or had it in the moment she chose to die rather than give her body and soul to Bob. Women know what it's like to endure the threat of danger from men every single day. Women know what it's like to see your potential cut down in large ways and in small ways. Laura Palmer was one of the first complex women I saw on screen. Women are complex, creative, fascinating people. And so is Laura Palmer. And I love to celebrate her. And I hope you can too.
This episode started out as exploring Laura's story from beginning to end. Although, with the return, her ending isn't quite as clear as it used to be. I'll say it again. I don't have time to unpack all of the return. However, if we're going off the idea that in the final episode, or the final 2 episodes, I think it's the final episode, that Cooper successfully goes back in time and finds Laura before she meets Ronette and Leo and Jacques, so that, because they go wherever they go to do whatever they do, and that's where Leland finds her. So he stops her from meeting them, and he tells her that they're going back home. And they start walking, and then she disappears. So then he finds another woman who looks exactly like her, but 25 years older. Her name is Carrie Page, and she doesn't know who he is, doesn't know what he's talking about, but she is clearly in a bit of a bind. She has a dead man on her couch who people have said looks a lot like Bob, which I think is interesting. The actor, unfortunately, who plays Bob passed away not long after the original series, which makes me so sad because everyone said he was one of the most wonderful men on the planet. So he was not able to be involved with the return, but they said that guy looks a lot like Bob. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let's just go with that. You don't know how long he's been dead. He doesn't look good. He just So she goes with him. If we're going off the idea that he was able to go back in time and save her, maybe her angel didn't abandon her. Mm-hmm. By setting Ronette free, this is the thing that brings Cooper to Twin Peaks by wandering across the Canadian border and making the investigation federal. So if Carrie Page at the end of The Return is indeed Laura, which behind-the-scenes video confirmed Laura is written in the script and not Carrie, perhaps her angel knew she couldn't be saved that night and it would have to come later. Perhaps she had to sacrifice herself to be rid of Bob, to be rid of the destructive fire inside of her, to be brought back 25 years later. Carrie's story is cut kind of short by the end of The Return, which is why I don't want to harp on it too much, but I do think it's very possible that Lynch has just been waiting to bring Laura back to life. Of course, even before The Return, fans were keeping Laura alive all by themselves. In asking friends over Twitter to share what Laura means to them, this has kind of turned into a love letter to her. I'm going to share those with you now and share them with Laura to show her that people do love the real her. In fact, they love her even more for it. This first one is from Kat. She says, my favorite thing about Laura is her realism. I've never seen any other character that's going through abuse to be portrayed so realistically. The constant denial that it's her father to the point that she literally asks who he is while he's abusing her, which is one of my favorite scenes. She only sees Bob and she looks him in his face and asks, who are you? And then he turns into Leland. To her pushing everyone she knows that loves her away when she knows her time is drawing near. The scene that depicts it best for me is at the Roadhouse in Fire Walk with Me. She feels genuinely touched by the log lady, and Julie Cruz, who I see as Laura's angel in that reality, is her escape and comfort. I agree. I do think that Julie Cruz, she's the woman who sings the theme song.
Oh, okay.
And she's always performing at the Roadhouse. I think that she does see her as her angel in that scene, because it was right before that her angel disappeared. And finally, Donna sees how broken Laura really is, and as soon as Laura notices that, her walls go up and it's showtime. I've been very much that person before, where the world is crashing around you, but you put your walls up and you keep the sadness to yourself. I see so much of myself in Laura, and that's why she'll always be my favorite character ever.
Aww,
I agree.
Thank you, Kat.
Absolutely. This next one is from Julia. She is at MUA Mystery on Twitter. My favorite thing about Laura is that she feels like a real person to me, and I constantly have to remind myself that she's a fictional character. Through reading The Secret Diary and watching Fire Walk with Me, I know so much about her and the struggles she faced. I can relate so much to her inner thoughts, and she means so much to me as a female character that basically is the reason for Twin Peaks existing. Yes. I agree. She is
all
definitely...
All roads lead back to Laura,
yes,
it seems.
She is definitely the beating heart of Twin Peaks, which is why I think things can't be right until she's back, almost.
Also, I think it's just kind of funny how, I don't know, people have, different opinions about how David Lynch treats women, but it's like, I don't think Laura would have gotten any of this if it wasn't for David Lynch.
Oh, yeah. When they said they were going to do...
let's do a Twin Peaks movie, he was like, I'm doing Laura.
Yeah, Mark Frost was like, okay, so we're going to keep going and we're going to answer questions. And Lynch was like, no, we're doing Laura. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't want to do that, so have fun. And he was like, cool, thanks. So this next one is from at 1400 River Road on Twitter. I love Laura Palmer's strength, compassion, courage, acceptance, resolve, and complexity. I love her darkness as well as her light. So does David Lynch. That's not from them, that was from me. I love her connection to the woods, how it calls to her and almost seems like a part of her. I love how she writes. I love that no one can honestly state that they completely understand Laura or her life experiences, though she's been studied by scholars for 30 years. She is a mystery and will always remain a mystery in whatever form she manifests. Yet she's relatable even if we're nothing like her. We want to be her friend. She's simultaneously a normal girl and an extraordinary being, almost a deity in The Return, as she appears to have been created to battle evil. She is remarkable. Laura did not require saving. She saved herself, and she was never defeated despite all she endured. What Laura means to me cannot fully be articulated. Like an angel, she's with me during our darkest moments, offering her light. She is an angel for us all, and she will never go away. Aww. Oh, I 100% agree with that. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I didn't mention this. I didn't really know where to put it in, but in The Return, you see an entity known as Judy create Bob and send him out into the world. And then directly after that, you see Laura be created. And she is in a glowing or gold orb. And Bob was just in a black and white. Then her orb is glowing and it's her homecoming photo. So it's like she was literally created in answer to Bob.
Yeah.
To stop him. And I love that. This last one, I believe, is my last one, is from Solveig Stadford. She is Meanwhile666 on Twitter. She says, I think that I identify so strongly with Laura because of how similar her story is to mine. We see her double life and how she's so capable and confident in both of her worlds, and we think she's so strong and cool, but she's still a kid. I think of the things I went through in high school and become so shocked that no one intervened. When Laura's in real danger and everyone who knew her stands by and does nothing, I yearn to save her or change her fate the way I sometimes wish I could have changed mine. She represents the innocence and good in everyone, and with that subverts societal expectations that someone who has had sex or done drugs or made mistakes in her life must be a bad person. Yes, fully agree. I love that about her. She's doing the best she can with what she has, and because of that, I have an innate need to love and protect her the way I wish someone had protected me when I needed it most. Because of her, I'm trying my hardest to heal and help myself. She made me realize I deserve it.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely agree. I do think that, if anything, Laura's story shows you that no matter what happens to you, no matter how you react to it, as long as you work on yourself and you want, not to be fixed, but as long as you want, you know, that help, that no one is past saving. Even in the movie, how she feels like she's already gone, I don't think she is, because she comes back. So yeah, I think no one's past the point of no return if as long as you pay attention and you give that attention to the person that needs it the most, because that's the thing. Nobody gave it to her because nobody knew. Even if they did know, they didn't want to do anything about it.
And I think what year was Fire Walk With Me?
92.
What year was Scream?
96 or 94?
Because I honestly feel like I understand obviously that she does die in the show itself.
Right.
But looking at it as a whole, I feel like
for Scream.
she was like the first modern final girl in a lot of ways.
I will agree. Yeah, she
or
definitely.
like the epitome of what.
Because
a
I
final
feel
girl
even
is.
though she is dead, she is not dead.
Yes.
She says in the Black Lodge, I am dead, yet I live.
Yes.
So yeah, I think even if you're saying, even if Carrie Page is not Laura, she doesn't physically have a body, she is still very much alive in the lives of the people that loved her.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even when she says, oh, I think that no one's going to love me if they know the truth, there are people in the movie that she entrusts her truth to, like Harold and Dr. Jacoby, and they do still love her.
Yeah.
So I feel like, and obviously none of this is her fault. I don't want to say if she would just take a step back and realize, because that's not true. But I do think that it's just one of those things. If you are
it's just
a victim,
way to exactly maybe remind someone else, that and show somebody else that even if you feel like no one's gonna love you, it's like, well, here's this character that this awful stuff happened to, and people still love her,
and you love her.
Yeah,
so why can't you love you? Yeah, I wish I had time to go into Sarah and Laura, her mom, because I feel like Sarah can seem kind of complicit. And I don't, not that I don't agree with that, but Leland was drugging her. Right. But there is definitely, she definitely knew what was going on. I think her reaction to the dinner scene shows that, but it's also, she's stuck. What is she going to do about it? I think for her, she can't reconcile Leland with this thing he's doing to her daughter, because they're not really the same thing.
And I think when stuff like that happens, you disassociate from it.
Yes.
And just
because you don't want to believe it.
So many times I've heard like people that are older talk about the way their parents handled things. Yeah. And it's always like they just didn't talk about it. They didn't.
Yeah. Yep. And
like, you know, our Aunt Linda, I know she said a couple times, if like some guy was saying something to her or catcalling her or doing something, her mother would just be like, don't bother.
Don't make it worse.
Yeah, don't bother with him. Stay away from him. Not, he shouldn't have done that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it just perpetuates that, well, you must have done something to make that happen. Yeah. And I think she embodies that so well, and the diary explains that so well. If you don't understand why somebody going through that would react that way, read her diary and you will understand, because it's a very, very real thing. And I think her and Sarah are very connected when it comes to the supernatural aspect of Twin Peaks, which I did not have time to talk about. Yeah. I think, and she mentions that she does have a lot of close moments with her mother, and she does wish that she could tell her mother. And I don't know what would have happened if she told her mother, because at the end of that dinner scene, Laura walks away to go wash her hands, and Sarah's like about to get up and to go console her, and Leland tells her no.
Well, I was gonna say, you know, it seems like Bob's a pretty evil, awful person. You know, I don't know if he would have allowed, because I feel like that's the thing that it does. Bob. Like that kind of evilness is the thing that makes people feel like they're. they're isolated.
Yeah. Yep.
And keeps people away from you and feeling like you're all alone.
Yeah. And they portrayed that so well.
Mm-hmm.
So well. Well, that was my Laura Palmer episode. If you can't tell, I love Laura. I just love all of her story and her life and her maybe not so death.
We're
Hopefully,
burning a Laura Palmer candle
we sure
right
are.
now.
I have a little Funko Pop of her in my room. I have my Fart Walk With Me socks that I'm going to put on afterwards. Yeah, just, maybe if you watch Twin Peaks and maybe didn't get what I'm talking about from it, maybe take a rewatch.
Yeah.
Maybe, read her diary if you haven't. Just live in Laura's life for a while. I think it would give you a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Comfort? Catharsis?
I don't know if comfort's quite the word. A different perspective on things, maybe.
Mm-hmm. We do have a few announcements.
Oh, yes.
We are working on a radio show. Well, it's a podcast, but...
Yeah, this is everything.
And it's going to be a science fiction.
Fictional audio drama.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for saying the thing I couldn't think of and explaining it properly. Think, like, No Sleep.
Yes. The No
Black
Sleep
Tapes.
podcast, the Black Tapes, Rabbits.
In the vein of that. Braska.
Yes.
Even.
Oh, love Baraska. When's that coming back for season 2?
I
I've
don't
heard
know.
nothing.
I don't even know if they're doing a season 2.
They have to. They didn't finish the story. They set up the sequel. They can't just not do the sequel.
I want them to make a movie real bad.
I want to make a movie real bad.
So then actually don't
So
make
nobody
a movie.
make a movie of Baraska because I'm going to do it.
And then we are also working on a limited series, possibly more, with a friend of ours that we're actually going to be filming. So we are writing that currently. So we're going to be directing. Katie's going to be directing it and everything.
So we're going to be taking a bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, a little bit. We're going to do possibly 2 episodes for March.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, maybe 1 or 2 for the summer, basically. We're taking a hiatus for the summer, which we're not, like, actually taking a real one, because, like, you will hear from us.
Yeah, you will still be here.
You will still be here. But obviously, these things, the fact that we're literally recording this on the day we're supposed to put it up, this takes a long time.
Yeah.
Stuff like this. Writing it and figuring it all out, it takes a long time, it takes a lot of effort. So in order to, like,
and I've been working so much.
Exactly.
And that's
so
not gonna stop
in order
anytime
to
soon.
put all of our attention on those things that need to be written, we're just gonna do...
You gotta pump the brakes a bit.
Yeah, just a couple. In case anyone cares or is actually listening. That's what we're doing.
I'm very excited for March, though. I have an episode about BoJack Horseman, which is one of my favorite TV shows in the whole world, and I'm very, very excited for it. So keep your ears open.
And I
for
may
that.
do another episode on Bridgerton.
Yes.
I hate myself. And I'm reading the book currently, and I'm having a good time with the book, and it's just making me even madder that the TV show didn't do so.
Did what it did.
So I'm just going to be talking about the differences between the book and the TV show, and why I think things went a little wonky. But hopefully that'll be fun.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you to all the people who wrote little stuff for this episode.
I appreciated it so much. And I just want to say the Twin Peaks fan community is some of the nicest people I've ever met. Like, fans of other things can be
Star Wars.
terrible. Yeah. Can just be, there's just a lot of, like, discourse and infighting, and it's so odd, because it's like, do you even like the thing that you're fans of? But everybody that I have talked to that has reached out has been so nice. And I also did I did 2 episodes, I don't think the other one is out yet, of the Twin Peaks Unwrapped podcast. I did some voice work for them. I got to play Donna, then I got to play Harry Truman.
Yes. For the description.
Yes, they're
the
great.
Link for that in the description.
I can't talk at all today either. I understand. So yes, I know 1 or 2 of the people that I quoted were also a part of that Twin Peaks watch party. But yes, just want to say, love the Twin Peaks fan community. I love all of you. You are also amazing, and I hope you had a great Twin Peaks day. And no longer R.I.P. Laura Palmer, because you know what? She's not dead. So this can actually be a day of celebration.
Surprise, you thought you'd seen the last
Surprise, bitch.